Do you judge other people? Well, I do. And I'd like to talk about why I think it's so crucial to listen to that judgment. I'd like to suggest that our inner judgment is the shadow that is cast by our own inner cage. So, listening to our judgment is like listening to the evidence in an active hostage situation. Our judgment of other people is pointing back to the cage that we have crawled into ourselves. And that is also the key to free ourselves. Let me start out by telling you how I see judgment to begin with. I think judgment arises as a defense mechanism. At least that's been the case for me. When I was younger and I was in situations where I didn't feel very valuable and didn't feel like I was welcomed, it's like I had two options. Either I'd just feel inferior and worthless, or I could judge the other people, tell myself stories of why I'm better than they are, or why they are not very valuable, like lowering them. At least I didn't feel so inferior anymore. And that's not the worst of options, I guess. But the price to pay for judging other people is that I block myself off from connection with them. It makes it hard for love to flow between us. So the price is pretty high, both for myself and for them. I'm not available for connection with them. Yes. So why did I want to share that? Well, I wanted to remove this stigma that is around judgment, as though it comes from us being bad people. But once we see that it arises as a defense mechanism to save ourselves from the most horrible feelings, worthlessness, inferiority, powerlessness. And this was our childhood strategy of escaping those feelings. And all of a sudden, evil or maliciousness doesn't really come into the equation. And now let's move on to the other side. Why in adulthood, or when we feel ready, is it so crucial to listen to this judgment? Well, because usually it comes up in situations when someone else is doing something that trigger these feelings, like a risk of me feeling inferior or worthless. And that makes the situation very interesting. So then this defense mechanism coming up of like, oh, that person is way too loud, they're taking up too much space, who do they think they are? Whatever that tape says. And then rather than either suppressing, pretending that you don't judge, or the other thing, which is listening to it and believing that it's true, there is an invitation for a little gap of going, hang on, what was that about? And when you listen to your judgment, regardless what it's about, let's say it's about someone being way too extravagant, they have colorful clothes, they laugh out loud, they take up a lot of space. If your inner judgment is, oh, they shouldn't behave that way, and you're like, that's interesting. Why shouldn't they behave that way? Well, I don't know what they might say. Well, that's not really professional way to show up in a meeting. So it's important for you that people are professional. Well, of course it's important that people are professional. How other do we appear as competent? So it's important for you to be competent. Well, yes. How other will I be loved? So once we hit this spot of what it's actually about, my judgment of that person is they're doing something that I'm not allowed to do, because then I am not lovable. So what that person is actually doing is that he or she is breaking the rules that I have put on myself. When we judge someone, they are breaking the rules which we ourselves are forced to live under. And that's the cage. And here's a crucial point as well. The judgment of them might be that they're doing something that's a value that we want to keep ourselves in. Maybe they're treating an animal unfair, and I judge them. In the sense that I judge them as not feeling love for their animal, and that's very tragic. And then when I trace that judgment back, I realized that no, this is not a cage value. This is a core value of mine. Treat animals with kindness. That is very different from the rule of you have to show up professional or you're not worthy of love. So the judgment is not always bad in that sense. What it does is to show my inner values, the inner rules I have to live by. And once we bring awareness into that, we can choose, we can free ourselves. You know what? Actually, maybe I don't have to show up professionally all the time. Maybe I'm also allowed to wear colorful clothes. What about that? I lived my whole life limiting this thing, and then this person comes around, extravagant, flamboyant, taking up space, and he or she is showing me where I limit myself. Do I want to show up like that? Maybe, maybe not, but all of a sudden I am allowed to. It is my inner freedom to do that, should that impulse ever arise. And that's a tricky one to find if we don't listen to our inner judgment. The way we judge other people is the way we judge ourselves. And sometimes that is so deeply ingrained, so we ourselves would never break those rules. So we don't even know we have them. They're just operating on autopilot and we don't see them. They become obvious when someone else breaks them and we judge them. For me, all of a sudden, it almost becomes a joyful little game. When my inner judgment arises, I don't pay so much attention to who it's projected at. I turn my attention around and go like, whoopa, that's a very harsh sentence. Where did that come from? Let me look. Let me follow its traces back. Is this a value I want to uphold? Or is this my inner cage, casting its shadow on this poor person, just going about their day, living their life? And also, this is also crucial. Freeing ourselves from our inner cage is not necessarily a comfortable thing. If I notice that I'm not allowed to show up colorfully, I'm not allowed to take up space, that doesn't shift just because I see that that's a rule I hold myself against. But knowing that I do is the first step. I might not have the resources or right now there's so much other things going on, so getting rid of that cage, or this angle of the cage, isn't my priority right now. Well, that's fine. We don't need to change everything we see inside of us. Just noticing it is actually setting the foundation for transformation to occur. Every time we note these little weird stuff going on inside of us, we weaken their power over us. Maybe we want to go all in and challenge it truly. Well, that's beautiful as well, but we don't have to. Just because we see it, we don't have to change it. We don't even have to change our judgment of other people. It's just our mind being trained that way as a defense mechanism for decades. It can keep going. I just don't have to believe it anymore. If I don't believe that my judgment about other people is innately true, it doesn't matter if it's there. It's just a play of the mind, like an old tape recorder. Yes. How do you relate to your inner judgment? Do you allow yourself to play around with it, or is it still a bit taboo, something you wish didn't exist? Yes. Thank you for sharing this moment with me, and looking forward to see you next time.